Um, Let me go ahead and share the screen. Oh, this one, that's what I want. Okay, this is the Nova Prime workshop on Balsa and Balsa workshop. And as you guys know, in Balsa, we break things. That's what we call our problem. We're not problem four, we break things. We are Balsa. Okay, just before we start, I want you to know that, can you all see my screen? Everybody can see that, correct? Shake yes. Okay. So before we start, just want to let you know that anything anything I think is remotely part of this year's problem will not be discussed. So I can't tell you how to answer the problem, okay? I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk too much about the problem at all. That's on y'all. No way, no how, no exceptions. So if you ask me something specific about the problem, I'm going to tell you to look at the problem because I'm not allowed to answer because that would be outside assistance, okay? Okay, the process for building a balsa structure is very circular and you'll do it a lot. First thing you do is you come up with some sort of design. You build that design, you test it by usually crushing it, and you figure out why it broke, and then you try to make it better. So you go back to the design. You do that over and over and over again until you run out of time, or you've come up with the most awesome structure ever, and that you can't break, which will never happen, but it's always a chance. So you guys have questions about anything in particular, though, as we're going along, please stop me and ask, because otherwise I'll just babble on forever. Design is what I recommend for people is to start building small. Don't try to build a full-size structure right away. Try to come up with something that's maybe a quarter size or half size, use half the balsa or less, and just come up with something and see how much stuff you can put on it. When I coached balsa, my teams would use all the books I had, all the old encyclopedias I had, and would stack those on the structure to see how they would go. Everybody would build something and test it at the meetings. I know you're not meeting in person, or you may not be meeting in person, but you can do that at home. I had a couple of people that built them at home and would test them at home and tell me how they did. So that would happen too. Building, this next part of that, once you come up with a design and you build it, building takes a long time. Don't try to rush it, because the more you rush it, the more the weight will find the weaknesses. And if the building, if it's not put together in a where it'll hold, where it really looks neat, that'll show up in the crush. Then you test it, like I said, and you can use anything you want to test it. Like I said, we would put books on it. At one point, my teams would be able to stand people on it, and then we'd hand them books, whatever it takes to just kind of get an idea of what the structure can do it. After it breaks, though, that's where you analyze it. You try to figure out why it broke, how it broke, and how you can keep it from breaking the same way. If your structure's breaking the same way over and over again, that would be a clue as that there's something wrong right there. So you'd want to look at that. And then you design the next one and you go round and round and round. Okay? Any questions about that part? Okay. Like I said, the rules are we test things by breaking them. If you don't write it down, it didn't happen. And if it didn't happen, you can't make it better. So you want to keep track of what you did and what the design looked like. You might want to take pictures of your structure before you crush it, so you remember, so you're not doing the same thing over and over again. Like I talked about before, sloppy construction beats a great design. You can have the awesomest design, but if you stick it together with half the glue or whatever, or the cuts aren't right, that'll cause the great problems to fall down and the thing won't hold any weight. The simplest solution is probably the best. So if you're overthinking something, think that looking up stuff for the most major designs, that may not be the way you want to go with it. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of information out there for how things are built. You guys have lots of access to things online on how things are built and what they look like. That would be the things that I would look up things that people have done in the past and see what things that look like. The problem changes a little bit every year, so you can't use the exact same designs, but there's ideas on what things have worked year after year and what things haven't. Those are the things you want to look at. And if you have a question and don't ask it, then nobody can answer your question and you just go without. So again, if you have a question, please ask me. Writing things down, that's right now, is probably the most important things you do because you can share that too. What are you trying to do? What did you want the structure to do? How did it work out? You want to know whether it went well. What didn't go so good? Did it break at the joints? Did the wood break? Did you cut it wrong? Did you cut your finger off? Stuff like that. Those are bad things. What should you change? And then what did you learn from that crush? Again, the analysis of what happens after you break something is one of the most important parts of doing balsa, because you have to see what you're doing, what shows up wrong from the weight. You can think it looks great and think it's the best structure ever, but if it breaks, there's something that's causing it to break. Okay. This is from Don's in-person thing, is what you might want to try though, and it's something is you take one piece of plain piece of paper. You don't have to do this now because we're not in person. This is from an in-person thing. Using only the piece of paper, hold your can, you get a can and you get a piece of paper, and using only the can and the piece of paper, you try to hold the can as high as possible up. The structure has to hold long enough for for somebody to come and measure how high off the table it is. So if it falls off, that's something you can do on your own. I did all kinds of these type of problems with my team to make them think outside the box. But it's something you can do at home. It'll teach you a lot about structure building if you use just a piece of paper to hold up a can. And you can hold up some pretty big cans. And it's something you might want to look at because that gives you ideas too for building your structures. So don't just look at balsa structures, look at other things, how things are built, how people build bridges, how people build buildings, stuff like that, because that's all applies to this problem, balsa. Did we learn anything? No. Okay. As far as building structures, there's usually triangles are your friends. Triangles are some of the strongest things as far as supporting weight and or distributing force. Squares are also your friends. You want them to be things to be as truly square as possible. So that may involve building jigs to hold things steady while they dry. One of the hardest things in balsa building is that it takes a long time sometimes for the glue to set up, and you especially as kids are in a big hurry, you guys are usually in a big hurry to get something done and want to see it finished, but you kind of have, balsa teaches you have to wait. And balsa teaches you have to take your time and do things right. Triangles and squares together make a very, very strong structure because they help distribute the weight and they help keep the structure together and they help the structure support itself, okay? Generally, there's two different trends in building structures. There are square structures and there are triangular structures. Some are harder than others, but then there's advantages to each one. So it depends on how comfortable you are building and how precise you are in your cuts. One thing that my team learns in the past is that it's best to have something very sharp to cut the balsa. They bought special cutters. You don't have to. But you can buy, there are things out there that are sold specifically to cut balsa wood. And there are also things to cut things precisely. So there are small saws, razor blades. If you have adult supervision, you can use the razor blades or the cutters. Sandpaper is your friend. You want to make it as square as possible before you put it together. And that helps the glue bond. Stuff like that. Okay, and the other question is how do things break? Does anybody have an idea? There's 3 different ways structures can break. Do you have any idea what they are? Anybody want to take a shot at it? Yes, go ahead, Jesse. Unmute yourself.
If it isn't strong enough.
Yeah, but that's true. If it's not strong enough, it's going to break. It can also, but there's 3 different ways that things fail. You're on the right track. Okay, I'll show you. That was good. That was a good answer, though. Um, there's three ways. It's not too complicated. Okay, either the wood breaks because the wood's not strong enough, like Jesse was talking about. A joint breaks where you've glued something together and it breaks because the glue's not strong enough, or it twists. And if it twists, it's because of the way the structure is built. The most common way that the structures fail in this contest are usually the wood breaking, or all of these actually, but or it twists. But I've seen more structures twist than actually the wood fail. Okay, twisting is part of construction, is the way it's designed. If the wood breaks, solutions are get better wood. I know OM's Odyssey sells a balsa kit that has all the wood in it that's all supposedly the same. There are places out there. I don't recommend you going to Michael's or stuff like that and buying their wood, A, because they don't take very good care of it, and B, you're never sure if they've mixed in something that you can't use. That's very common for them to have base wood in with the balsa wood, and you can't use base wood. It's got to be balsa. And the people at Michael's and stuff like that, and stores like that, really have no idea. There are online companies that also sell balsa wood, and they let you pick how strong different weights to the wood. A single stick of wood can, balsa wood 3 feet long, can have different density to it. And it's up to you guys to decide what kind of density works best for you. But they let you pick different things. They also sell what's called a practice bundle, where they just have a bunch of wood that they will send you. It's a lot cheaper. It's not as good for building the structure itself, but it's good for practicing with, because there's a lot of it, and you can do all kinds of things with that, and practice and test and all kinds of things with that. The other way that you can strengthen wood if it breaks all the time is what it says is laminate pieces of wood. Instead of having one piece of wood, you glue 2 pieces together. Then it can't bend in that direction. Okay, so then you're reinforcing that piece of wood if you glue them together lengthwise as opposed to on the ends. You can also do bracing, where you add braces, where if you have too long a piece of wood, it will bend. So you want to brace it to where it's somewhere where it keeps it from bending. So you put braces to hold it in those spots, and that's where the triangles come in. Okay, any questions about that stuff? Okay. If a joint breaks, there's 3 reasons that usually breaks. Okay, is it's not really glued together properly. So it will, if you don't have enough glue, or with some of the glues, if you have too much glue, it'll come apart because it's not getting into the wood. You can either use a different type of glue. Some glues are better than others. There's all kinds of information out there about how to test your glues. Everybody loves super glues. There's other types of glues. Super glue is good because it dries fast. Other types of glues that may take longer to dry may be a stronger joint. One thing to consider with the glues, though, is that different glues weigh more than others, and the glue is going to be part of the weight. I mean, if people had the choice, they'd put glue all over the thing to try to hold it together, but that adds a lot of weight to your structure, and that counts against you. Use a different type of joint, and I'll go over some joint types in a minute. Maybe it's you're gluing a joint to where they hold together one way, and it might be better if the weight was acting on the joint in a different way. And I'll show that there's some slides on that, and I'll show you that in a second. And the other thing is bracing, like that seems to come up with a lot. So if it's breaking because there's not enough contact point, maybe you need to add a brace there, which adds more glue to that spot. So that gives you another place where the glue is being reinforced with another piece that's holding it someplace else. And in the slide, it shows where the brace is holding one to the other. Okay, and they do that in houses and buildings and all that stuff are braced. So that's something to look at. Look at what you might want to do is go look around for things online or stuff that show buildings under construction, that shows the inside of the house or the inside of a building with the steel. It's the same principle with balsa wood and building the structures. If it twists, generally what it does is it does a rotation, and you'll see the weight rotate on the thing, and it'll break. And that's caused because it not being level. Some of the best teams for for doing structure and putting the weight, we'll spend 2 minutes, 3 minutes, making sure that the structure is level on the tester board and making sure that the first piece of wood that you put onto that holds the weight, making sure that's perfectly level, and they will look and everything else. This is where sandpaper is your friend, because you want to make sure that all the contact points on both ends of your structure are flat. And then when you assemble it, yes, sir. Jesse, go ahead.
From the last slide, couldn't we just use like nails or screws, or do we have to use glue?
In balsa, you're only allowed to use the balsa wood and glue. You can't use nails or screws for balsa construction. So you're only allowed to use glue and the balsa wood.
Okay.
Okay, that was a good question. If you could use nails and stuff, that'd make this problem a little easier. Okay, the other thing that happens is it causes it to twist is if it's not balanced. If the weight is off center, if the structure's not centered on the tester board, then that'll put more weight onto one section of your structure, and that'll cause it to twist too, because that side will start to fail first and it'll drop lower and it'll cause it to spin. When it spins, it breaks. Okay, because it puts stress on the parts of the structure that weren't designed to hold together the way that you were intending it to. Okay, any questions about how structures break? Okay, they have another test thing here that he did with, another thing you can practice with is building stuff. Get 6 or 7 pieces of spaghetti, and you can use tape for this or glue. And try to use it to hold things up. And that'll teach you a lot too about building structures. Have one piece of spaghetti and just hold it and try to bend it, and then tape a bunch of them together or glue a bunch of them together and try to bend it and see what that does. Like, that's good for instruction on how, and balsa works the same way as spaghetti, although balsa tends to be a little bit stronger. But it gives you an idea too, if you have long pieces of spaghetti, see how easy it is to bend that. And take short pieces of spaghetti and see how easy it is to bend those. And then what's the difference and what can you do to make them better? Go ahead, Jesse.
Do the pieces of spaghetti have to be cooked or not?
No, you don't want uncooked spaghetti. You're going to build out uncooked spaghetti and just build a structure. Like you're going to build whatever idea you have for building a structure. Try to build out a spaghetti first, and that gives you some idea of how to stick it together. And it gives you a model too. Okay. But then you build something and you put a can on it or put a book on it and see if it holds the book up and see how that fails. If you don't have enough balsa, that's a good way to test structures. And then once you have one that you think is pretty good, then you build it out of balsa. Okay. Okay, that goes with that. Okay, here's the different types of joints. Okay, different types of joints to build things together. There's a butt joint, and that's where it just butts up against it. There's a miter joint where they're at an angle. Those are a little bit more challenging, but it's a little bit stronger. And it depends also on the butt joint. Sometimes the butt joints hold the vertical, and sometimes they go together where you put the butt on the top rather than on the side. And those have different strengths and different tendencies for breaking and different ways to hold things together. So that is things to consider when you're building your structure, is how you want your joints to go together. Some are easier to make than others. The most common one we see is the butt joint because it's easy. Miter joint, it has to be pretty precise. There's a lot of engineering there, but it's then there's got more advanced ones. A dado joint has a little notch cut out, and so the piece goes into the wood, which when the structure is compressed, it holds that piece of wood. That can be very strong. You also have a half lap joint, which if you're trying to hold things keep them from pulling apart, that gives you more contact area for your glue, which holds them together that way. Types of structure, again, the more advanced you get in your build, the harder it is, the more time it takes, but the stronger you'll end up at the end. I don't know what else to say. So in the end, though, it's your solution. What you come up with is always, I mean, it's going to be right for you. Own it and be proud of it. Always be proud of your structures, no matter how much it holds. If it holds nothing, you've done more than most of the people at Odyssey because you built a structure and you put it out there to be tested. And that's always amazing. It's amazing what teams come up with. You'll be amazed at how much weight your structures will hold. And every time you make something, just try to make it better the next time. Try to add more to it. Okay. Try to see what went wrong. You do your analysis and you try to figure it out. That's all I have on that. So does anybody have any other questions for me about balsa structures or building or anything like that? I can try to answer any questions you have, not directly related to the problem. Jackson, I know you want to ask them. Have you guys been building any structures? Any pieces so far?
I'm about 2/3 of the way up of one side, but I may redo the design with a combination of a dad joint and a miter joint. So it's really strong.
Very good. Very advanced.
A little notch, put the glue in it, boom.
Yeah, that's the thing. So we're excited to try them out.
That's part of this is to try things out. So yes, it's awesome. It's really cool again, you learn how long it takes to build these structures, and you're learning how long this takes, right, Jackson? Jesse, have you built stuff too? No? Give it a shot. You never know. And again, like I said, try things out of spaghetti too, just because that can be faster and gives you some more ideas. It's hard to do some of the other joints, but that's awesome. For competition, you might want to because it takes a long time to build these, we recommend you bring 2 structures in case something happens to one while you're walking from place to place, so you can get it, so you don't have to rebuild it, okay? Also, I don't know where I was going with that question, but okay. There's one other person, but I can't see them. So if anybody has questions about that part of it, how the structure weigh-in is going to be is they're going to do the weigh-ins in person. Our region's going to be in Tyson's Corner at some point. They're going to announce where that's going to be. You'll see me there. And we'll do the weigh-in and the check-in, and they'll do the weight separate from the performance. I don't think they've come up with a final way of how the weight, the test is for the trapping and everything else is going to be, but I know that that's going to happen. What we'll do is we'll have you show the structure. You need to make sure that it will fit over a tube of caulk. And I didn't bring it in here, but that's the tester for how tall, for the opening in the middle. If your tube of caulk will fit in it, you're good to go. Need to make sure it's tall enough. So the 8.5 inches. And other than that, anything goes. Okay. So we're always excited to see balsa structures. I had 2 daughters that did this. I had teams that went to state did this. I had one team that every single person that graduated high school that did the balsa thing is now in engineering in college. So they're very excited. One did an internship with Tesla. Another one did some engineering places with NASA. So they're very excited. So going great places by doing balsa to begin with. So any other questions or comments or anything? I've taken up enough of your Sunday. Anything else, Jackson, Jesse?
So I'm the coach for Jackson's team. And will your slides or presentation be posted on the website just in case, we wanted to point other team members to it?
Oh, you'll be able to do that? Yes.
Yes, we'll be posting the video as well as the slides. So yes, we'll definitely be able to do that.
Okay.
I thought so, but I didn't want to commit. So, and as far as you being the coach, awesome, because Balsa, we get very few teams, and we're always excited for there to be teams. And it's very challenging to be a coach for Balsa because there's so much that goes with it. But Balsa is always the best problem, whether anybody tells you that or not, because not only are you doing something that you can instantly know how well you did from at least half of it the minute you walk out of the room, because you know how much weight you held, and that's something you can show. And then you have the whole creative side with the performance and everything, which is awesome too. So this is the most broad problem as far as I'm concerned. It's very cool. Anybody else want to add anything, answer anything, question anything? One thing you want to do, I want to remember to ask, especially you, Coach, is to check the website, the competition website for the clarifications. Balsa clarifications really there aren't that many right now, and there usually aren't that many, but you can get some important information there from that. Okay, Kenneth said no. So, okay. If nobody else has any other questions or comments, please, my email's on the website under Balsa for Nova Prime. You can send me questions. If I can answer it simply and it doesn't give anything away, then I'll happily answer the question. We've been asked all kinds of things. If not, then I'll have you submit it through the competition, and they'll post it up, and they'll post an answer if they think it goes that way. A lot of times the answer is check the problem, because usually the answer is somewhere in there. Okay. Any other questions? I thank you guys for coming. That was awesome, and I got very good questions, and I liked your input. Jesse, thanks for all the questions and your input, and Jackson too, and Kenneth, thanks for saying no. So we're good to go. So good luck to you guys. I know right now that there are like 3 teams competing at state level in Balsa. I don't know the age groups, and they're expecting maybe 5. So it's hard to do a problem like this that has so much hands-on distance. But you're not alone. But you have a good shot. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.